At some point, you noticed it. You are always the one who texts first, always the one who plans the date, always the one who reaches across the bed, always the one who says I love you first in a conversation, who asks how the other person's day was, who tries to create a moment of connection out of an ordinary evening. And at some point, maybe recently, maybe years ago, you ran an experiment. You stopped. Not forever, not dramatically, you just waited to see what would happen, to see if they would reach first for once, to see if the silence between you would bother them the way it bothered you. And you waited. And nothing happened. They did not text. They did not plan. They did not reach. And when you finally gave in and initiated again, they responded warmly, naturally, as if nothing had been different. Because for them, nothing had been. And that moment, that specific, quiet, devastating moment of realizing that the connection you thought you were building together has actually been built entirely by you, changed something inside you. Something that, if nobody addresses it, tends to keep changing. In one direction, away. What happens to a person who always initiates? What does it actually do, psychologically, emotionally, neurologically, to be the one who always reaches? Stay with me, because the answer is going to name something you have been feeling for a long time. Picture this. A woman, let's call her Sarah, married for 9 years, 2 kids, good husband, she would tell you, present father, genuinely kind. But Sarah is always the one who plans the date nights, always the one who texts during the day just to say she was thinking of him, always the one who initiates physical affection, always the one who asks about his inner life, what he is worried about, what he is hoping for, what he is thinking. And he responds. He always responds. Warmly, genuinely. He is not cold. He is not checked out. He loves her. She knows he does. But here's the thing that has been quietly accumulating inside Sarah for years. The thing she has never quite found the words for. She is exhausted. Not from the logistics of their life, from the initiating, from being the one who always builds the bridge, from the specific, grinding fatigue of wanting closeness with someone and having to create every single instance of it yourself. And one day, without planning to, without knowing quite why, Sarah stopped initiating. She waited for 1 week, 2 weeks, 3. He was fine, happy even, present with the kids, kind at dinner. Everything, technically, was fine. And Sarah sat with something that had no name yet, but that she would later describe to a therapist as, the moment I understood that the relationship I thought we were building together, I had been building alone. This is not a story about a bad marriage. This is a story about one of the most quietly devastating dynamics in long-term relationships, and it is far more common than anyone admits. I'm Dr. Alex Morgan, this is The Connection Theory, and this episode is for everyone who has ever run that experiment, who waited to see if they would be reached for, and discovered something they could not undiscover. Think about the last time you initiated something with your partner. Not a practical thing, not who called the plumber or made the doctor's appointment, an emotional thing. A reaching thing. A moment where you created connection that would not have existed if you had not created it. How did it feel when you did it? And how did it feel when you realized, again, that you were the one who did it? Here is something that most people in the initiating position have never been told, but that changes everything once you hear it. Every time you initiate a moment of connection, every text, every touch, every plan, every question about your partner's inner life, you are doing something psychologically specific. You are making yourself vulnerable. You are saying, without words, I want to be close to you. I am reaching for you. I am putting my desire for connection into the space between us and hoping you will meet it. Psychologist John Gottman found that the most important thing partners can do for each other is turn toward these bids. Not just respond when bids happen, but actively generate bids of their own. Creating a mutual current of reaching in both directions that keeps the emotional connection alive. In relationships where one partner consistently initiates and the other consistently responds, but rarely generates bids independently, something specific happens over time. The initiating partner begins to experience their own desire for connection as a liability. Think about that. What starts as love, as a genuine, beautiful, open-hearted wanting of closeness, slowly transforms into something more complicated, more careful, more defended. Because the initiating partner begins to learn through the accumulation of hundreds of experiences, when I reach, I get response. But I am always the one who has to reach first. And if I stop reaching, the reaching stops completely. And that realization that the relationship exists only because one person keeps choosing to build it is one of the loneliest experiences available to a human being in a committed partnership. But here's the strange part. The non-initiating partner almost never understands this is happening. From inside their experience, the relationship is warm, connected, and functioning well. They respond. They enjoy the connection their partner creates. They love their partner genuinely. They simply, and this is the key, have never had to experience what the relationship would feel like if they stopped reaching. Because they never started. Almost nobody realizes this, but the human brain keeps score. Not consciously, not deliberately, but automatically, neurologically, beneath the surface of conscious awareness. It monitors the social exchange happening in every close relationship. Neuroscientist Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA found that the brain processes social rejection and unmet social bids through the same neural circuits that process physical pain. Let that land. When you reach for someone and they do not reach back, not in a single moment, but as a consistent pattern over time, the brain processes that experience the way it would process physical discomfort. And the brain, being the extraordinarily adaptive organ that it is, responds to repeated pain by doing what it always does with repeated pain. It protects. Here is what that protection looks like in the initiating partner over time. First, the emotional investment in each individual bid begins to decrease. Because high emotional investment in a bid that consistently goes unmatched is a reliable formula for pain. So the brain begins to reduce the emotional stake attached to each reaching. The text becomes slightly more casual, the physical touches slightly more routine, the questions about the partner's inner life slightly less probing. Not because the initiating partner cares less, because the brain has learned to protect them from the specific pain of caring a great deal and being asymmetrically met. But here's the strange part. This protective reduction is almost invisible to the non-initiating partner. What they see is still their partner initiating. They do not see the internal experience, the slowly decreasing hope, the growing guardedness, the progressive withdrawal of the full emotional self from each bid. The second thing that happens is more significant. The brain begins to reprocess the relationship itself. The working model shifts from, this is a relationship where I am loved and wanted, to something more complicated. This is a relationship where I am loved when I reach, but not necessarily sought when I don't. And that distinction between being loved and being sought is one of the most important in the psychology of long-term relationships. Being loved feels good. Being sought, being the person someone actively reaches for, chooses deliberately, feels essential. It tells the deepest layer of the nervous system, I am not just present in this relationship, I am wanted in it. When that experience is absent, something begins to hollow out, quietly, steadily, in ways that can take years to become visible. Here is a question that might reframe everything. Why does the non-initiating partner not initiate? Not as a character judgment, as a genuine psychological inquiry. Because the answer, when you find it, changes how you understand the entire dynamic. Almost nobody realizes this, but the capacity to initiate connection in a relationship is not a personality trait. It is a learned behavior. A capacity that is developed or not developed through early attachment experiences. People who grew up with caregivers who were emotionally available and responsive, who turned toward bids, who initiated warmth, develop what psychologists call a high initiation capacity. They feel comfortable reaching. They believe at a deep, non-conscious level that reaching will be met. People who grew up with caregivers who were emotionally unresponsive, who were available only when approached, who waited for the child to create connection, often develop a very different internal template. They associate initiating with vulnerability and uncertainty. And so, as adults, in intimate relationships, they tend toward the pattern they know, being responsive when approached, but rarely generating the approach themselves. Think about your own relationship. When did your partner last initiate something emotional, not because you had created a moment for them to respond to, but independently, from their own desire for closeness. And here is the painful part. That limitation, invisible to the person who has it because they cannot see what they are not doing, is experienced by the initiating partner as rejection, as evidence that they are not wanted, as the slow, accumulating answer to the question they can never quite bring themselves to ask directly. Do you actually want me here? Or are you just comfortable that I am? There is a specific, predictable, almost universal sequence that happens to people who carry the initiating position for long enough without anything changing. Stage 1 is hope. The initiating partner initiates from a place of genuine, open, hopeful love. They reach because they want closeness. The asymmetry has not yet registered as a pattern. Stage 2 is awareness. At some point, usually gradually over months, the initiating partner becomes aware of the imbalance. They notice they are always the one who texts first, plans, creates the moments. They tell themselves it does not matter. But the awareness is there now, and it cannot be completely unseen. Stage 3 is testing, the experiment, the stopping, the waiting, the deliberate withdrawal of initiating to see what happens in the silence. Almost universally, the silence is met with more silence. The non-initiating partner does not notice, and the initiating partner's test produces an answer they did not fully want but cannot ignore. Stage 4 is grief. Not dramatic grief, the quiet kind. They are grieving the relationship they thought they were in. The mutual, reciprocal, two-directional partnership, the version of their partner who actively wanted them, the part of themselves that used to reach so freely. Stage 5 is withdrawal. The initiating partner, exhausted, grieving, and increasingly self-protective, begins to stop reaching. Not because they have fallen out of love, because the cost of continuing to reach without being reached for has become greater than what they can sustain. And the non-initiating partner, often for the first time, begins to feel the distance, begins to feel something is wrong, begins to realize, too late sometimes, that the warmth of the relationship was being generated almost entirely by the person who has now stopped generating it. The initiating imbalance in relationships is not just a personal dynamic. It is shaped significantly by the broader cultural environment. Modern technology offers an unprecedented supply of passive connection, the feeling of warmth and social presence that comes from consuming content online, from following people on social media, from group chats that provide a constant low-level hum of social engagement. For someone who has a lower natural capacity for initiating genuine emotional connection, this passive connection offers something seductive. It offers the feeling of being socially engaged without any of the vulnerability that genuine initiating requires. And the initiating partner sits beside them, reaching into a relational space that is increasingly occupied by the glow of a screen. Modern American culture also glorifies self-sufficiency, and the non-initiating partner can mistake their own passivity for emotional maturity, for giving their partner space. What they are actually doing is allowing the emotional labor of the relationship to be carried entirely by someone else, and calling it equilibrium. What if the initiating partner is not the one who needs to change? Here is the deepest truth I have found in the psychology of this dynamic. The exhaustion you feel is not a weakness. It is accurate information. It is your emotional system telling you something true about the cost of what you have been carrying. And it deserves to be said. Not as an ultimatum, not as an accusation, but as a truth, an honest, clear, compassionate truth that the relationship desperately needs to hear. Something like, I have been the one who initiates almost everything between us for a long time. The texts, the plans, the physical closeness, the emotional check-ins. I have done this because I love you and because I want us to be close. But I am exhausted by it, and more than exhausted, I am starting to feel invisible. Like the connection we have exists only because I keep creating it, and I need you to know that. Because I cannot keep being the only one who builds us. That sentence, something like that sentence, is the beginning of what actually changes this dynamic. Not because it immediately produces a different partner, but because it names the truth that has been living unspoken in the relationship. And in naming it, in making the invisible visible, it gives both partners something real to work with. Think about your own relationship. Is there a version of this truth, your version, in your words, that has been waiting to be said, because the dynamic almost never shifts on its own. The change requires a conversation, an honest one, a specific one where the initiating partner describes their experience with enough clarity and enough vulnerability that the non-initiating partner can finally see the gap, can feel, for perhaps the first time, the specific weight of what their partner has been carrying. That recognition, when it happens, changes everything. Not instantly, not completely, but it opens something, a door that was not open before. Let me leave you with something. If you are the partner who always initiates, hear this first. You have not been doing something wrong. You have been doing something extraordinary. You have been showing up over and over again for a relationship you believed in. You have been generous with your reaching in a way that most people never are. But it was never supposed to be yours alone. You deserve to be reached for, not just responded to, reached for, sought out, chosen actively, not just welcomed when you appear. And if you are the partner who does not initiate, who responds warmly but rarely generates the reaching, hear this. The person you love has been building something alone for a long time. Something they have called a relationship, but that has, in the most important ways, been a solo project. They are tired. They may not have said it yet, but the tiredness is there. And if nothing changes, the reaching will eventually stop. And when it does, the silence will finally register as something you cannot ignore. But you do not have to wait for the silence. You can reach now, tonight, for no reason other than that you love this person and you want them to feel that love as something active, as something that seeks them out, that finds them, that says with its whole presence, I want you here. Not just when you appear. I want you. And I am going to show you that by reaching for you first, for once. That reach, imperfect, perhaps awkward, perhaps unfamiliar, is the beginning of everything that needs to change. I'm Dr. Alex Morgan. This has been The Connection Theory. If this episode names something you have been living with, please share it with the person who needs to hear it, or with yourself as the first step towards saying what needs to be said. Subscribe for more psychology of love, intimacy, and human connection. And I will see you in the next one.